I'm Chris Arabsky, and welcome to KARE 11 Extras. These are the stories that take a little extra time to tell, to research, to find. They're meant to inspire, inform, and ignite curiosity. And in this episode, it was supposed to help their chronic pain. Instead, they said it left them paralyzed. KARE 11 investigates as more patients come forward and at least one country pulls the device. Plus, the pension problem leaving hundreds of Minnesotans' retirements at risk. But we begin in the land of 10,000 stories. A new museum is set to open this fall to more widely share the stories of Minnesota veterans. Stories being brought to life by a Minnesota sculptor. Boyd Hooper gives us a sneak peek at some of his premier pieces and the woman behind one of his warriors in the works.
I'm just going to start working here.
Even when he's working alone.
Yeah.
David Geister isn't.
I never get lonely. I always have somebody in the studio with me.
For the past 2 weeks, he's been with someone special.
Kay Bauer, she is a Vietnam War nurse.
2 weeks that started a year and a half ago.
I was tasked with creating at least 13 named Minnesota veterans.
Veterans whose stories will be featured here. The soon-to-be-completed Minnesota Military and Veterans Museum, opening in September near Little Falls, a 40,000 square foot tribute to those who served, funded with $40 million in public and private donations.
The whole mission of the Minnesota Military and Veterans Museum is to tell the stories of Minnesota warriors. There you are.
And those guests keeping David company?
They'll walk us through Minnesota military history from the Civil War to the War on Terror.
Including Patrick Taylor, who buried his brother Isaac at Gettysburg.
This fellow right here is Chuck Lindbergh, and he is one of the Iwo Jima flag raisers.
All Minnesotans.
General John Vesey, chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff.
Mostly
Virginia Lane Fraser,
departed.
a woman who was a World War II veteran.
Which makes notable David's time with Kay.
I'm the short one.
From her early days in the smallest men's uniform they had.
Then they hand you an M14 and I fell over.
The Navy nurse moved on to spend a year
This is me.
in a primitive South Vietnam hospital.
She has the most delightful smile. If I was looking up, wounded on a gurney or something, and you'd see this face peer down at you, looking into those eyes and thinking, I think it's going to be okay, I think I'm going to be all right.
David has a soft spot for those who care for warriors.
I spent 4 years in the United States Marines when I was a young man.
Then
This is a painting I did for the National Park Service.
the self-taught artist started caring for veterans in his own way
The Battle of Gettysburg.
by painting their stories.
Yeah, this is typically what I do.
These sculpting skills are new for David, honed specifically for this project.
It makes me a little nervous because Kay is going to be able to look at this.
With the permission of the artist,
Can I show you something?
Yes, sir.
we decided to give Kay
This isn't done yet.
a preview.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Look at that. Oh, can you believe that? I am. Oh, my goodness gracious.
The 89-year-old has told none of her friends about this,
I'm just afraid to tell them.
in case you didn't love her enough
That would be bragging.
already.
I can't do that.
I'm really looking forward to painting her eyes.
For David and Kay and the rest of his company, another mission.
This is without a doubt the most meaningful project I've ever worked on.
Boyd Hooper,
I have to heat up
KARE 11 News,
the clay a little bit.
Minneapolis.
If you'd like to learn more about the new Minnesota Military and Veterans Museum, you'll find a link in the print version of this story at KARE11.com. By the way, you may have seen David Geister's work in another format. David created the illustrations for all 5 children's books authored by Alan Page, the NFL Hall of Famer and former Minnesota Supreme Court Justice. David says he'll be starting work later this year on Page's 6th book. You can now watch full half-hour specials from Boyd's Land of 10,000 Stories wherever you stream. You can also watch every story from the beginning in 2004 by searching for the Land of 10,000 Stories, the complete collection, on YouTube.
Paralyzed after getting a popular medical device implanted to relieve chronic pain. Now more Minnesota patients are coming forward.
I woke up and then I couldn't feel my legs.
And at least one country's pulling many of those devices off the market. KARE 11 investigates next.
If I knew this was going to happen, trust me, I would have never gone through with it.
More Minnesotans are coming forward to say they were paralyzed after a controversial spinal procedure. A procedure investigative reporter Lauren Lemanchek found is restricted overseas, but still widely used here.
Still learning to navigate life in a wheelchair.
I don't hit people. I do hit walls. Ouch.
Despite sudden,
Sorry, but my,
excruciating pain.
my back and feet hurt so bad I can hardly stand it.
Do you need help, Mom? Is there anything I can do?
The result, Judy Palmy and her daughter Kelly say of a medical procedure gone wrong.
Did anyone ever warn you about the risk of paralysis?
No, I don't remember it ever being brought up.
Judy went to neuropain clinics to fix chronic back pain. And almost instantly, they recall, her doctor recommended a spinal cord stimulator.
The actual stimulator was introduced with literature and pamphlets and stuff on her very first visit there.
Spinal cord stimulators are implanted in the spine with leads run up the canal, sending electrical signals to block pain receptors. Medical records show during 2 trial implants, those leads migrated, moved out of position in Judy's back. Judy says her pain doctor still advised going ahead with a permanent implant.
I woke up and then I couldn't feel my legs.
At the hospital, a neurosurgeon found it was likely an injury occurred during the procedure. And Judy will never walk again.
I'm going to wear, they call it a brief, I call it a diaper for the rest of my life. Do you know how traumatic that is?
A woman who'd recently colored Easter eggs with her great-grandkids and cared for her sick husband never returned home.
So the last year of his life, I wasn't with my husband. I was in a nursing home.
She is now suing her doctor and Nora. Judy is one of 4 local patients KARE 11 has spoken with who say they were temporarily or permanently paralyzed after receiving spinal cord stimulators.
The brochure said it was safe.
Linda Mose spoke with us from a rehab facility just 8 weeks after her procedure at Twin Cities Pain Clinic.
About 2 hours after I came home from the procedure, I stood up and had excruciating pain. And within 5 minutes, my legs started getting really weak.
At the ER, surgeons found Linda had suffered a hemorrhage within the spinal canal.
Now I am in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I'll never walk again.
The use of spinal cord stimulators is growing. One expert analysis estimates 50,000 are placed in patients every year worldwide. But a KARE 11 review of FDA data finds in the last decade, more than 200,000 reports of injuries. And a 2020 report by the nonprofit Public Citizen found spinal cord stimulators had the 3rd highest number of medical device injury reports submitted to the FDA.
We cast the net globally.
That type of data prompted Dr. Adrian Traeger to study the devices in Australia.
We looked specifically for trials that compared spinal cord stimulation with placebo, because we know that's the highest level of evidence we can get.
The result? This groundbreaking report with a surprising outcome.
What our review found was that there is actually evidence now that spinal cord stimulation is no better than placebo. And that really shocked us.
Their conclusion, spinal cord stimulation probably does not have sustained clinical benefits that would outweigh the costs and risks of this surgical intervention. Coupled with evidence of injuries to patients, the Australian government took action. In 2024, pulling more than 12 devices off the market there and restricting new implants of more than 70 others.
Following our publication, they decided to substantially restrict the devices in Australia.
But here in the U.S., the devices remain as popular as ever, and the American Academy of Pain Medicine has disputed Traeger's findings and methodology.
And I think there have been some recent publications, including a Cochrane review, that made some flawed conclusions.
Past president Dr. Antje Bareveld says she's seen success stories firsthand.
Yes, the spinal cord stimulation for the right patient can be extremely effective. And it's really about the right patient and for the right indication.
In Judy's case, Nura has denied wrongdoing. In a statement saying, in part, all medical treatment options carry different degrees of risk, which we thoroughly review together with each patient prior to treatment, adding they follow a rigorous process to qualify patients for any procedure. Twin Cities Pain Clinic also said they follow recommended standards of care and review potential risks and benefits with patients.
When people are in pain, you're vulnerable.
But patients living with outcomes like this say the risks were not clearly spelled out, and they were sold hope only to come home in agony.
If I knew this was going to happen, trust me, I would have never gone through with it.
We've heard from multiple patients, and coming up, more from a woman who says that she was pressured to get one of these devices by several pain clinics, even after her neurosurgeon told her it could lead to paralysis. We're back with her story. We've been reporting on how a popular but controversial pain treatment is being routinely prescribed at local Twin Cities pain clinics. And one patient says she was pushed into getting one despite serious risks. Lauren Lemanchek continues to investigate.
I look like I'm 90 years old after I sit for a while.
Pain has long been a part of Cammie Laval's life, at times so bad.
And I had begged to get some limbs amputated.
So in 2015, she went to the University of Minnesota to be evaluated by a neurosurgeon for a spinal cord stimulator. The implanted devices use electrical currents to block pain. But an MRI showed a problem. Cammie had cervical stenosis, narrowing the spinal canal, and the doctor wrote, making implantation of a stimulator difficult and risky.
He was very blunt and said this could cause paralysis, and you're not a candidate, and I would not advise you to go this route. I was devastated at that time.
But later, grateful, because years later, she says multiple local pain clinics tried to convince her to get the device. Cammie has a complex range of diagnoses and has to go to different doctors for care. KARE 11 reviewed medical records showing even after she told one pain clinic she'd been deemed unfit for a spinal cord stimulator or SCS implant, the pain clinic's patient plan was still to do an SCS trial. Same thing at another pain clinic, which also noted her previous records, yet still advised the SCS trial.
But they said, oh, that's nonsense, we'll make it fit. I was shocked that that was being said to me.
Did you feel pressure to get
Absolutely.
one of these devices?
Absolutely. I felt pressured.
Cammie, who is an advocate for people living with chronic pain, reached out to KARE 11 after seeing our stories about people who say after having those spinal cord stimulators implanted, they were paralyzed.
I woke up and then I couldn't feel my legs.
They said I'll never walk again.
Spinal cord stimulators are marketed as a safe alternative to opioid pain medication, but they're also expensive, tens of thousands of dollars. And they're controversial as critics cite high numbers of injury reports linked to the devices.
Australia has even severely restricted them.
We wouldn't do these procedures for our patients if those risks were thought to be high.
Dr. Antje Bareveld of the American Academy of Pain Medicine defends the broad use of spinal cord stimulators as safe, but says patients need to understand risks.
I recommend spinal cord stimulation in my practice, but it's not for everyone, and it's not without risk. But for the right patient, it really can change their life.
Cammie says after our story, she heard from other patients like her.
I still get phone calls about it.
Who felt pressured to get the implanted device. Even more concerning, she says, because severe pain can make someone desperate.
And some people get to the point where they will just agree to anything.
For KARE 11 Investigates, I'm Lauren Lemanchek.
For Lauren's full investigation into these injuries, you can go to kare11.com/investigations.
Imagine the retirement you saved your whole life for at risk.
Sorry, I'm going to get emotional about it because it's so scary for me.
The pension problem leaving hundreds of Minnesotans in limbo. Next.
Right now, there's a serious pension problem leaving hundreds of Minnesotans' retirements at risk. Rena Sargentopoulos shows us what's going on, who's affected, and why some worry there's not enough being done.
We've been 6 months in limbo, not knowing, and it's been so stressful for so many people.
Last October, some 1,400 employees in the St. Cloud Catholic Diocese got a letter. Their pension fund, run by Christian Brothers Services out of Illinois, was significantly underfunded, $35 million underfunded, and unable to meet long-term obligations.
Opening that letter, I mean, I have lost a lot of sleep, to be honest. I've lost weight. I've just been kind of a wreck.
Mary spent nearly her whole career as a teacher in the diocese, and now she's one of nearly 300 employees, including administrators, youth ministers, and other lay people who have formed a group to advocate for themselves.
The present employees who've been working for 25, 30, or some even 40 years and are looking at retirement, they're going to be even in worse shape than we will be. And that's, that's not right. That's not right.
The group has asked for 4 things. Most importantly, to make sure the pensions are fully funded and that people are made whole. They want listening sessions, a seat at the table where decisions are being made, and transparent communication, none of which they say has happened.
One thing that the diocese has said consistently from when they first started communicating with those of us affected is, we didn't know. If they didn't know, they should have known.
How does something like $35 million go missing? These are the same questions we're asking Christian Brothers.
Vicar General Father Scott Pogachnik says he understands how difficult and scary this is for those impacted, but maintains the diocese didn't know there was a problem to this degree.
When 180 organizations learn this news at the exact same time, it tells us it's not those organizations that were missing something, it's that the reporting, that communication was not clear.
And that's where this gets even more complicated. This isn't just happening in St. Cloud. 180 employers and 40,000 employees across the country found out about the shortfall at the same time. In total, Christian Brothers has an $800 million gap between assets and liabilities. The New Ulm and Crookston dioceses, along with St. Mary's University, are also affected. So, how did this happen? Especially at a time when the stock market has been going gangbusters in the last 3 years. We reached out to Christian Brothers, who issued a statement saying in part they never fully recovered from the Great Recession of 2008. And, quote, there are far more retirees than active workers contributing into the system. This is a chart of funding history given to us by Christian Brothers. You can see the dip in 08-09, but take a look at the dip in 2020. Yes, COVID, but also the pension plan lost nearly $150 million that year because of, quote, a reckless strategy by German-based Allianz Global Investors. Christian Brothers sued Allianz, and there was a settlement in 2021. When asked how much they got back or if it had an effect on this shortfall, they said this. The terms of the settlement are subject to confidentiality restrictions. The impact of the Allianz losses and subsequent settlement are incorporated into the plan's net returns.
I think last time I checked, there was only 15% of private companies that are still offering pensions today.
Thomas Schrank, certified financial planner with Northwestern Mutual, says pensions are still popular with unions and government agencies, but says there are fewer of them privately because, well, they are expensive to keep going, especially because people are living longer. But there is usually a safety net in place if a pension fund fails.
There's a pension benefit guarantee corporation, PBGC, that these pension funds will just pay a premium into. That's why they're giving you the guarantee, is it's backed by this third party. So if a pension does terminate or freezes, then PBGC can come in and make people whole.
This situation is different, though. Churches are not subject to the same federal protections, leaving the shortfall squarely on the shoulders of the churches and schools impacted. Those employers were given options: stay with Christian Brothers and make large contributions for the next 25 years in order to erase the shortfall, or spin off the pension fund and take it over themselves. And that is what St. Cloud has chosen.
We are working to remedy this in every way possible. And that's still what we're holding ourselves to, is to be able to provide the full benefits to these people who are like my brothers and sisters. These are employees of the schools I've had to run, and these are employees of my offices, current and retired.
Father Pogachnik says all options are on the table, knowing it won't be just one thing that will fix the problem. But that still leaves retirees right now wondering about their futures.
I worry constantly about how I'm going to manage if they cut all that. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional about it because it's so scary for me.
And as time ticks by, the Pension Concerns Group worries legal action against the diocese will be their only recourse.
We do not want to go down that avenue. Everyone loses that way. But we also want to fight for what's right.
Both the diocese and the Pension Concerns Group have websites dedicated to this, and we have links to them with this story. It's on KARE11.com. And some advice from our financial planner so this doesn't happen to you. He says pensions are a great retirement option if available, if in fact they will pay out. But you should also consider saving in other ways, like a company-sponsored 401k or 403b. Remember, you can continue to catch up on the KARE 11 Extras wherever you stream. I'm Chris Arabsky. Thanks for watching.